So this happened 6 years ago. I was preparing to move into a new house across the state and trying to get rid of anything that took up too much space. Craigslist was the only way I could think of to do this easily, as well as bringing in a bit of cash extra to help me with the move. I posted about 10 separate listings of random things. Each item I was asking less than $20 for, just because I wanted them to go quickly, and for most of them, they did. I think only a couple were left by the end of the week, one of which was a workout bench with a set of weights. This was probably the last thing I wanted to haul into the moving truck and into the new place, so I really wanted it gone. I waited until just a few days before the moving date, before someone finally sent me an email. I opened it, and all they said was, "I can pick it up today," nothing more. I sent a reply asking what time they could come at. We ended up going back and forth over the course of an hour, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find the interaction odd. He would only write a vague sentence or two per message, making it take forever to plan out the exchange. In most other situations, I would never give away my address, especially in such a weird conversation, but I was moving away in just a few days, so I didn't feel it mattered too much. So I sat on my phone in the kitchen for a while, just waiting for the guy to arrive. 30 minutes went by with no call or text, until I heard a car pull up outside, and then footsteps coming up to the front door. I waited for the doorbell, or a knock, but nothing came, so I went up and opened the door. He looked startled, like he wasn't expecting it, but he also wasn't doing anything. From the small glimpse I got while opening the door, it looked like he was just standing there, staring forward with his hands in his pockets. "You here for the workout stuff?" I asked. He nodded, and I invited him inside and showed him where the bench and weights were, then let him check out the stuff for himself. Except he didn't. He stood there and looked at it, but didn't do much else. I already knew after the emails that this guy was going to be quiet and probably shy or something, but something else was definitely off about this guy. We stood next to each other as I waited for him to say something or check out the bench. It was a really awkward minute, but then there was a knock at the front door. The guy's head whipped around and he looked at me with wide eyes, like he was gauging my reaction. Although my gut was telling me this was something horrible, I tried to play it cool. I started walking to the front door, and the guy followed close behind me. Right before I got to the hallway, he stopped, grabbing my arm. I immediately pulled away and asked him what was going on, but he kept the same blank face and didn't say anything. There was another knock, and this time the man instantly ran down the hallway and swung the door open, giving me enough time to turn around and run out the back door. I looked back and saw 3 more men entering my home. Luckily, they didn't chase me, and I was able to get to a neighbor's yard where I hid and called the police. While I waited, I saw movement in the windows of my house. It was unnerving to see that, especially knowing I could have been in there if I hadn't gone out the back door. A whole 5 minutes passed before the movement stopped, and a couple minutes after that, the police showed up. To keep this from dragging on, the police didn't get much evidence from inside my house. The best they had was my description of the one man who I let in. 4 intruders couldn't take much, at least considering my house was mostly empty at this point in the moving process. What they would have done to me had I opened the door or stayed inside the house is unknown. I think it's unlikely that I would have got unharmed though. I've never opened Craigslist even once since then, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. So this happened last summer. I'm a 32-year-old male, and I live alone in an apartment outside of the city. At the time, I just moved in and had thrown away a lot of old stuff that I had from my other place. So I was occasionally scrolling through Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, looking for a few furnishings. The 2 things I needed the most were a coffee table and a TV stand, but I wasn't in too much of a rush, so I didn't mind searching for a couple weeks, if I had to. I remember it being a Monday night, and I had just gotten home from work. I was just scrolling through some posts on Craigslist at the dinner table, and came by a coffee table that I liked. Cheap, not too old, and in good condition. I sent an email and continued scrolling, but not even 20 seconds later, I got an email reply back. The man, Cole, said he could sell it to me, but it had to be tonight because he was moving out and planned to throw it away in the morning. Having nothing else to do that night, I responded, "Sure, just let me know where to pick it up from." He sent over an address, and I did a quick Google search of it. The house was 25 minutes away, in a neighborhood I'd never been to before. I told him to give me an hour and I'd be there. Although I was tired and it was pretty late, I didn't mind doing a quick pickup. I was also just happy to finally get a coffee table for my living room. I finished eating my meal at the table, then got in my car and started driving there. There was a light drizzle outside, so I was hoping the table wasn't too heavy, and we could quickly get it in my car without getting water damage. The drive there felt long, going down some windy roads until ending up in a small, poorly lit neighborhood. By poorly lit, I mean that there were very few street lights, all being dim, and most of the houses had their lights off. It was late, so I didn't expect everyone to be up at this time, but still, it was a bit creepy. When I found the house, it was a small one-story place, one of the few houses that had its lights on. As I turned into the driveway, I saw a man standing in the corner of the garage, seemingly searching for something. When I put the car in park, the man looked over at me, then quickly ran inside. I waited for a minute, thinking he was gonna come back out, but he didn't. I exited my car and walked into the garage, knocking on the door. Then I knocked again, but nobody was answering. I wasn't sure if I should go to the front door or what, but it was giving me a weird feeling, and I was starting to think of just leaving when the door suddenly opened. It was a different man than I'd seen in the garage, but he introduced himself as Cole. He invited me in to check out the coffee table. I followed him into the living room. The table looked as it did in the pictures and wasn't broken or anything, so I was good to buy it. Cole was making small talk with me, telling me about his new place he just bought, but every time I tried to interrupt and say I'd like to buy the table, he would keep talking. It started to get uncomfortable, standing there listening to him talk over me for 5 whole minutes. It felt like more of a distraction, like he was keeping me there. I finally just cut him off and said I was in a hurry and needed to get home soon. He stopped talking and said I could have it for free. I suspiciously said okay, then asked if he could help me haul it into my car, and we both grabbed it and started walking it through the house. It wasn't super heavy, but it definitely was a 2-person lift. We got it into the garage and set it down for a rest, but right away, I heard someone running up behind me. They came from the side of the house, running up to me wearing a mask and hoodie. I froze up, both scared and confused. The man wasn't very aggressive, and Cole just stood there with a blank face. The man asked for my wallet and phone, holding up a knife at me. I put my hands up, but I really didn't feel threatened enough to comply. He asked again, louder this time, but I took my chances and sprinted for my car. The man lunged at me, but I kept running, getting in and locking the door before they could do anything. I backed out and drove away, and that's when I noticed the cut on my arm that went through my shirt. The man must have slashed me, but in the moment I didn't even notice. I pulled over a few roads down and called the police, providing them with an address and description of the 2 men. To sum it all up, the cops questioned Cole, which was actually his name, and after a brief interrogation, he admitted the masked man was his buddy, and they were just trying to rob me with no intention of selling anything. They were both young, and it was their first time trying something like this, so I guess they were nervous, and that's why it felt so strange. Lucky for me, the cut on my arm wasn't deep at all, not even needing stitches. When it came down to it, they were given a few charges, but nothing too serious. I'm glad I chose to run though, because I worry that if I had let them take advantage and rob me, then they would have had the confidence to continue doing it. After this though, I don't think they'll be trying that again. So I found this house on Craigslist that me and my roommate were interested in renting. We didn't have a huge pool of money at the time, so taking up low rent offers on Craigslist was just about the best we could do right out of college. We sent in a quick request to tour the place and included both of our phone numbers as well. A few hours later, I got a call from the owner, Kim, who said he could have us tour the place tomorrow. but had other tours scheduled for the rest of the week. My roommate worked that day, but knowing he had other people lined up, and we had to see the place soon or risk losing it, so we both agreed that I would go see the house and just take pictures of it for my roommate to look at when he got off work. This wasn't ideal, but it was the best we could think of. When I got to the house on the following day, I was kind of disappointed at first glance. It was far from other houses down a pretty beat-up road, and the house itself did not look well taken care of. The outside had overgrown bushes and grass all around it. I parked in the driveway and got out to get a better view, but there wasn't much else to see. I stood there in the driveway for a second, debating if I wanted to flake on the owner and pretend like I couldn't make it. Sounds wrong, but I could already tell this wasn't going to be the place for us. Just before getting back to my car, a man called out to me. He came out of the front door and greeted me, and now I knew it was too far in. Kim seemed really excited to show me the place, so I went along with it. We went in through the front, and again at first glance, the inside was really disappointing. It was very old and even looked kind of run down. As we walked through the house, I noticed more and more things that just didn't look right. The entire place was so worn down. I couldn't see how this would possibly be livable, and I was positive these were not the pictures he had posted on Craigslist. I asked if he planned any repairs or anything, and he started running through a list of things he had planned. He basically named every part of the house, which made it obvious he was making impossible promises. After touring the whole first floor, he started walking me up to the second floor. We got up to the hallway. All I could focus on was this one door in the far back that had a padlock on it. Then I looked down at the dusty hardwood floor and saw multiple shoe prints of different sizes, but all of them went to a single room, yet none of them were coming out of the room. Even if I was missing some shoe prints exiting, I still knew that if they were from people touring the house, they would have gone to all of the rooms, not just the one. This all came to thought within a few seconds of being upstairs, and my heart started beating faster as I got nervous. Kim walked down the hallway, passing by one of the rooms and going straight to the one where all the shoe prints led to. I stopped and stared at him as he opened the door and urged me to come look. He looked at me for a second, but then recognized my nervous face and said for me to come over this time, like he was demanding it. My adrenaline started pumping, getting me to break from the shock and run back down the stairs, straight to my car. I pulled out and drove off as the man came chasing me down the driveway. I called 911 as soon as possible, but when they got there, the house was empty. Nobody was inside. However, the room with all the shoe prints leading to it had signs of recent activity, showing that there were at least 2 separate people being in there. And the room with the padlock had a ton of garbage, like food wrappers and old blankets. The house was abandoned 8 years ago, and these people seemed to have been living there for a while. I don't know what their plan was to do to me, but it most likely was a setup for an ambush. What scares me is that they weren't trying to sell me anything that day, so there wouldn't be reason to believe I had a bunch of cash on me. And that makes me question what ambushing me would have been for. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you guys had a great weekend. If you guys did like the video, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. And as always, stay depraved.